everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Living La Vita Loca podcast. My name is Fazz.
And I'm feature rich.
Still love that. I'm waiting for more sassy names that go before rich, like Money Rich.
Asset rich, cash poor.
Yeah, oh wow, that's brilliant.
I've been workshopping these most of the week.
That's what I'm here for, though. That's the kind of stuff that I genuinely live for. So please keep working on those. So this week on the pod, we're going to be reviewing, battling even, antagonistically against each other, breaking each other's arms about which Wipeout we think is the best Wipeout, respectively from each of our handhelds. So there were different, well, certainly for me, there was different iterations of this game on the PSP. But I don't know if yours was, but mine is Wipeout Pure, which was the first game that was released for the PSP, and we're going to be reviewing that, and that's going to be battling against.
It's going to be up against Wipeout 2048, which, again, launch title. As far as I know, it's the only one, unless you count backwards compatibility and stuff like that. But it did have some pretty hefty DLC options, which we'll get onto. In what I've because neither of us are drinking tonight, I've decided to refer to this as Teetotal Wipeout.
Nice, yeah.
That, again, fair chunk of my week was spent brainstorming that one.
And we have a pod name! Yay! Oh wow, I love it when it actually comes out. I mean, I'm on the Powerade, so we never know what might happen. That could slide. I don't really know what the blue goo does to you. Again, that's slogan-y. Powerade, drink more. So, before we get into any of that, though, we wanted to talk about a little bit of news, and a little bit we want to cover off a couple of bits from the last few weeks on the pod. I certainly want to start with that we're noticing really that there's more listeners, which is nice on a more regular basis. Thank you very much for listening. So, we're starting to gather a bit more listenership on a more regular basis, and we're really happy that you're enjoying the pod. So, thank you so much. You can catch us on our social, our Facebook, our Instagram. Please do interact with us if you want to. Also, don't if you don't want to.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, if we're getting more listeners and they'll hate it, as long as they're quiet, I don't mind.
yeah, fuck off. That's just our standard response for most things, to be honest, around here at the moment. So, and then also, we want to talk about something we spoke about quickly last week, and we had a little go at trying to make happen, which was the demo disc that I received through the post from eBay.
Yeah, so PlayStation 1 demo disc, official PlayStation magazine, number 45. We tried it in the PS2 and it didn't work at all. It just shrugged its shoulders.
Do you know what? I almost bought a PlayStation 1 this week because I was like, I need to get this demo disc and then play only demo discs from there, but I resisted the itch for now.
So I cheated and hopped on an emulator and went through. Do you want me to read you what was on it, or do you want to discover it for yourself at some point down the line?
No, I want you to. I can't. I'm not a spoiler kind of guy. I just don't care about spoilers. I want to know everything now. I want all information inside me.
So, Actua Ice Hockey 2.
Yep.
Yeah. This one I was very excited to see, right? It was a video of the finals of a Tekken 3 tournament.
Oh, right, cool. That's awesome.
Featuring a very young Ryan Hart, which was a personal favourite of mine, especially
It's so weird that that's on a demo disc.
Yeah, it's incredible. And
I bet that footage is nowhere else.
Well, funnily enough, I did have a look on YouTube because I suddenly thought, oh shit, are we on sitting on a gold mine here or something? We're not.
Oh.
So, turns out, shout out to PS1 Demo Museum on YouTube, who is fighting the good fight and archiving PS1 demo discs.
That is a museum that is well visited.
It's well worth visiting. So, on my emulator, it seems to be able to run the actual demos okay, but this video it really struggles with. So I was sat in front of this really choppy, really distorted video, being like, I would actually watch that. I'll just see if it's on YouTube, and lo and behold, whichever do-gooder is running the PS1 demo museum has managed to get a much better quality version of the video on there. So that made me very happy.
That's great though. That isn't so. I mean, I know I probably sounded a bit underwhelmed about Actua Ice Hockey 2, but it gave me fond memories of Actua was it Actua Soccer?
Actua Soccer?
Yeah, Actua Soccer. I think I had number 1 and number 2 of that, and I really enjoyed those games, and they were terrible ones. Pro Evolution Soccer, well, ISS Pro Evolution was it, or International Football Soccer on the PS1, but
International Superstar Soccer on the N64,
that
like
would be
ISS,
the same.
and then kind of became Pro Evo, and then the naming gets all out of whack.
Yeah, so, but Actua Soccer, or Actua Ice Hockey, quite straightforward, so well done to them.
Yeah,
I'm going to give an extra point in the review that I'm never going to do.
To go back to the reason for digging into this, the Actua Ice Hockey thing just quickly flashes up, the controls as you're booting it up.
Right,
4 buttons, all you need, and then it just ditches you right in a game.
Yeah.
Gives you a little bit of preamble. Apparently Mogwai contributed to the soundtrack.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I know, right? So, who knew? So it was clearly geared towards just dropping you in. A couple of other highlights. Lurking on there, I didn't get around to dipping my toes in, but Ridge Racer Type 4 is seemingly on there.
Okay.
R-Type Delta is on there. Gex Deep Cover Gecko is on there.
Nice.
And then you're kind of into the realms of like things that I'm curious but completely oblivious to. So Typhoon, Swing, Big Race USA, and Pandora's Box Net Yaraze, which I think might just be an advert for one of the other videos that was on PS1 Demo Museum's YouTube channel. There was something from Net Yaraze, so I think it might be an advert that I'm drawing a complete blank on.
That's so cool. That's just random things in there that you're like, well, I've never heard that. I don't know what that is. When you said Typhoon Swing, I was like, the tea? I was like, is that the tea brand that we have?
I mean, that could be fun.
Yeah, we'll drink that one week. Typhoon Swing.
They were 2 different things, Typhoon and Swing.
Oh, sorry.
So you've managed to invent a beverage-based video game. I suggest you go and make it. The world needs tea-based games.
Well, can it be as bad as what I see sometimes when I'm looking on the internet and it's like, what's the worst game for, I think it is a PlayStation 1 game, is it the Pepsi?
Oh, Pepsi Man.
Pepsi Man game?
Yep.
Yeah,
that's completely real.
We could probably make a game as good as that now,
probably. But then I think
with tea-based.
I don't see why not. I mean, there was Cool Spot for 7-Up as well on the Mega Drive.
I genuinely thought that. Oh, shit! Right, I just thought that was just a cool game. I didn't even realise it was like
it was
7-Up
the dot from 7-Up.
Yeah, I didn't put that together.
Also, like Treasure made a McDonald's game on the Mega Drive, and it's apparently quite good.
Wow.
So they have set a high bar. Unfortunately,
McDonald's would always be reviewed as quite good. Wow. Well, thank you for digging into that treasure trove.
Yep.
That's better than I thought it was going to be for £1.90.
That's not bad going.
Like even hearing what was on there, and and actually you can have a little, I guess, half an hour fun, I guess, on there maybe. Yeah,
I mean, quite happily, and presumably, if it was anything like some of the demo discs I got for stuff back in the day, the magazine would have, got into the detail of some of these things in a bit more detail. You could absolutely while away a bit of time. I mean, Ridge Racer and R-Type floating around on there. I mean, you could absolutely get your money's worth from that.
Yeah, cool. So, I guess, I don't know, I was trying to think of a good segue there.
Oh, there is one.
A Mogwai.
Oh, hang on. No, I got one. Value for money.
Yeah.
Buying new stuff.
Cool. Excellent. We're getting there.
Rumours of a new Sony handheld that isn't actually a handheld, if the rumours are to be believed.
Cost a lot more than £1.90, I would assume.
You probably have to move the decimal point a few places. But yeah, so there's word round the internet campfire of a new Sony handheld, and I was like, oh, okay, right, I'm listening. And then it was swiftly followed by word that it was actually basically for PS5 for remote play, and sounds almost like it could be their equivalent of the Wii U screen controller thing.
That just seems like such a weird idea, or weird, it's almost like the Sony, and why did we make a podcast all about Sony when all we do is moan about what they're doing? But I guess that it just seems very strange that they're trying to sort of muscle in on a lot of the different markets. Like, we're trying to get in on VR, and now we're trying to get in on handheld, like the Switch, but we are trying to use the old concept that Nintendo had that never worked and failed for them. Yeah. That seems very odd to me that they would even think that's a great way to go with it.
What what you'd have there is a peripheral for a console, not a handheld, as far as I'm concerned. You know, if you slap an SD card reader in it and put a digital store on it, sure. You know, like that's a different story. And considering...
It's a pricey story, though.
It would be a pricey story. And admittedly, like what the rumours are saying about how it's like a PS5 controller, sort of basically either side of the screen, sure, it sounds interesting, but I mean, the Vita had PS4 remote play. I'd used it a few times. It wasn't great, but it was still wrapped around the rest of the handheld. You know, it could do its own thing still. So Digital Foundry did a really interesting bit on their weekly chat about it, and obviously, you know, they came at it from a very technical angle. But any which way you look at it, it sounds as though it would be a difficult thing to make stick with consumers. You know, potentially people would go for it. I could see some people, but for me, it's just like, well,
how much were PlayStation 5 to start off with? Like £600 or something?
5 or 6, I think.
Yeah. So you think you've done that, and then 3 years later, you're going to go and buy a peripheral control that plays some of your games that you can play in your home anyway. I assume, I mean, if Sony want it to be successful. Uh-oh, let's go back again. And I want, you know, you'd think that they would make it so that obviously you can use that on Wi-Fi somewhere else as well. Like, as in, you could still access your PS5 in, say, if I was in your house, you know, rather than, you know, just being able to do it in the house. I mean, that must be surely part of the process.
Yeah, that was basically what Digital Foundry were chewing over, because they had the point that if you do it as sort of direct console to handheld, sure, you could probably get decent quality video and stuff like that, but the problem is that as soon as you're out and about, that's where you're likely to want to remotely access something, and that is where the signal is awful. So it's a very interesting discussion if you're into the more technical side of things, but how it boiled down was, you know, would there be more demand for, say, a hypothetical device that was a scaled-down PS4 in your hand?
Yeah.
I mean, shit, yeah.
It was clear when I was reading the articles about it that everybody was like, oh, amazing, a Sony handheld, but as soon as the rumour started to come out, like a couple of days later, that it was for remote play, everyone was like, this is a bad idea. And it starts off on such a bad footing, whereas and funnily enough, everyone was like, oh, but another Vita, that is in an up-to-date Vita.
That could also remote play.
That would be lovely.
Yeah.
That could also do it. So, just stay in your box, Sony, and you know what I mean? Like, either shit or get off the pot, make another handheld, or stay on that pot and be really sad. Cry into the pot, Sony.
So yeah, that's the official word from Live in the Vita Loca. Stay in your lane.
You only get that kind of information here first.
Quote unquote information.
Look, internet campfires. It makes me feel like, speaking of another PlayStation staple that went the way of Mogwai, like, was PlayStation Home. That was on the PlayStation 3. And I won't lie, I tried to get into that quite heavy.
Did you?
Yeah,
because I barely ever touched it. I was sort of weirdly curious, but never really dabbled.
It was like a Sims Lite with your own avatar, and you were in like a little socialising world. And you could get round campfires and talk to other people, but it was almost like it was too late for its time again. That it was like a really cumbersome MSN Messenger with avatars.
Yeah, does that not feel very Sony though? You know, kind of too little, too late.
Yeah,
you know, like it's a bit of a track record, isn't it? That
certainly recently.
Yeah.
Well, when I say recently, the last 15 years.
So I mean, like, between VR, this hypothetical little device, PS5, and, you know, not to mention the fact that they make other things as well, and like they've got TV and all that kind of stuff going on. Should Sony focus a little bit more? You know, stay in their lane and just like focus, knuckle down to one or two things and do them really, really well. Like,
dear Mr. Sony.
Thoughts on your business models from an idiot.
They won't read it.
They won't.
Send it with a demo disc, and they'll be like, "Whoa!
Remember this?
Mind blown."
Remember what you were good at? Which is a really good segue to Wipeout.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we should stop agreeing on things and start.
Should we get antagonistic?
This is the first time that we're gonna, go at it. I mean, I don't really. I'm gonna caveat that with, I'll be fine with whatever happens.
The winner is Wipeout.
Yeah. Well, but it is though, isn't it? So if we think about Wipeout as a franchise, all I remember really is I haven't even played the first one on PlayStation. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, and I remember enjoying it, but also remember feeling like I just played it a couple of times and that was it, and then it was just in my collection and I barely got it back out again. I think I played Roll Cage more, and Crash Team Racing when that came around. It was almost as if I liked the concept of the game, but I wasn't that into it really. So it was like, oh yeah, this is quite nice and neat looking at it and stuff. But I was like, I'm not that bothered about futuristic ships and stuff. I want actual car to race with. I want something with wheels. But saying that, obviously it was a very successful franchise to start off with, and it made the leap to PSP immediately. And like I was at the start of the pod, it was a launch title. And when I picked it back up again, I saw really, really great reviews for it. In fact, both these games on Metacritic.
Ranking all the insects.
Oh my days. That Powerade. So, Metacritic. And I saw really, really good reviews for this, and some of the best ones that were on the PSP. So I was excited to pick it up because I'd never played it. And safe to say that I was really pleased with it as a game as a whole. The very first opinion of it, I thought it was one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, on the menu screen, it was just graphically beautiful. Nice. For a game from 2005, and the idea that it's called Wipeout Pure, it looks pure, it looks amazing.
So
just clean. It's a clean game.
I'm glad you say that, because I mentioned, Fiona was chatting before she went out earlier on, and she said, "Oh, what are you guys reviewing tonight?" And I mentioned Wipeout Pure, and she said, "This looks like a cleaning product."
Sounds like a drug. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe it cleansed my soul. So, I mean, I'm going to be perfectly honest though. When I first started out with the game, like I said, graphically and stylistically, it looked incredible. And I was like, this is amazing. From 2005, it looks so nice. And I thought, I wonder if graphically in-game it's as good. And it is. It holds up so well as a racer. To think that this is obviously nearly 20 years old now, and to see the speed with which your racers move, it barely drops a frame, really. And the way that you interact with the track and the music and the colours, it increases as you go through the game. Like, the more tracks you play, it almost feels a little bit bland to start off with in a way, once you know later on how colourful and fantastical it can be. But it just, it was a really lovely game to look at. And that pleased me, because sometimes when you go back and do some retro gaming, you think, oh, I want to play this game, it's really well reviewed, but it looks like a bag of shit. So, I don't know how you feel about 2048, 2048.
Giving it a Sunday name. Yeah, like as sort of, I'll do an opening statement.
Yeah, go for it. I've postulate, bitch.
I've basically got five categories that we'll go through.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Probably should have introduced that.
No, it's all right, because this is good. I like this. So
wait, you've got your chest face on.
Oh yeah, no, I'm in it to win it. Because unfortunately my Wipeout was quite good too.
It's not unfortunate though, is it?
But I do have some notes, so you do have a chance. It's not a great one, but you do have a chance. Basically, I'm going to win.
Threatened right now.
I'm going to rig the scores so I win.
Wait, I need to change mine. 10.
So, I'm kind of like you. I never really dabbled too much with Wipeout back in the day. I was kind of more of a like Extreme G or like an F-Zero kind of player. So for anybody that's kind of unfamiliar with Wipeout, anti-gravity ships flying really, really fast around a racetrack. Imagine like, I don't know, Formula One, but in hovercrafts in the future, and you're kind of getting close, right?
Yeah.
But you can occasionally blow each other up.
Yeah.
Kind of like Mario Kart. So, yeah, I was obviously aware of it. My kind of formative experience of it was really like, I have a very vivid memory of being around my friend Alex's house and he had the PC version of the original Wipeout, and we played it, and Prodigy was on the soundtrack, and that to this day remains like a kind of major formative, like whoa kind of moment. My problem is that forever and a day I've associated that moment with Voodoo People, and I did some checking. And that song's never been anywhere near that game. So I don't know if he just had a CD on or something like that, like at the same time. But yeah, it was Firestarter. Was on the original Wipeout. Okay. So I've managed to completely misremember a major formative experience, which is faintly terrifying, and I will be deducting marks for that Wipeout. But
you did this to me.
You did this to me. But nonetheless, like I've had 2048. Knocking around my Vita since day one. It came as a sort of pack-in title.
Okay.
And I dabbled with it, but I'd never really, until this week, dedicated much time to it. And it was kind of like a rom-com. Like, I've been pining for an F-Zero game for a long time, and I knew they were out there. And then I realised that Wipeout was in front of me all along.
Oh god, I'm really sick.
Yeah, like it's really good. And like you say, like graphically, it's very impressive. It's got a lot of reviews said that it had a kind of grittier style.
Because I guess we should say at this point, in the storyline of Wipeout,
such as it is,
yours is set
first.
Like 100 years before mine.
Yeah, so like everything's sort of in the early days of the league.
Stay off my turf.
So like it was really useful to in fact, what I did for a bit of research on YouTube. Shout out to Slopes Game Room, who did a really, really good history of Wipeout.
Oh, cool.
And I highly recommend it to anybody that's kind of got a passing interest, not least because he goes into a lot of detail about the link between the music, the game, and Sony as a brand, PlayStation as a brand. Like we were saying earlier about Sony staying in their lane a bit more. Yeah. Like this was peak Sony nailing it. This is good lane. This is where Sony should be, could have been, etc., etc. And how the Wipeout and its soundtrack kind of helped gaming grow up, I guess, become a bit more appeal to a more mature audience and stuff like that. And obviously you've got the overall aesthetics like you've touched on, and all that, and it all just kind of coalesced. So yeah, I've already bought myself more Wipeout. It's in the post.
Oh no! Well, yeah.
Well, yeah, but
which one?
So,
which one have you bought?
I've actually bought two.
Okay.
2097.
Yeah.
So that was the second one in the series, and apparently the one that kind of
the one
comes all together. Yeah. But I've also picked up the Amiga collection.
Okay.
So to go back to a point that I kind of half made earlier, graphically on the PS Vita, it is lovely. Like you say, it's really, really good to look at. Launch title, the Studio Liverpool, so yay Northern, but clearly knew what they were doing with the handheld. I think on Wikipedia even contributed to the design of the Vita.
Yeah, so that's really interesting you should say that, because going back to developing new handhelds, it's funny how much input this studio had in developing both the PSP and the PS Vita, apparently, which is great. Yeah, both times they had to almost help develop the controls with their game into the console, which is incredible to hear about.
Yeah, I think it shows, and they can clearly make good use of the bits under the hood to make it look nice as well. That said, there are a couple of times where it's a little bit trickier to see what's going on a track.
Okay.
And so it was kind of, it came to my mind to go hunting to see if there was any DLC, and it turns out there was. It was basically the sort of campaign bits from the PS3 Wipeouts.
Cool.
Then I realised that to buy it and download it would actually be more expensive than just buying the Amiga collection, playing it on my PS4 on a bigger screen where I can see what's going on and I've got everything there.
Sounds like cheating, Rich.
It's very much cheating. I haven't done that, though, for this review. But it was one of those ones where the more I started mucking about with it, the more I was like, oh yeah, I could totally see why people fell in love with the franchise back in the day. Really enjoyed it. And talking of controls and the consoles and stuff, I know I've ragged on about the touch pad on the back of the Vita and stuff like that. Yeah, apparently, if I remember rightly from the Wikipedia page, so, Wikipedia fact, everybody take it with a pinch of salt.
Wikipedia fact of the week.
Apparently the rear touch... Wikipedia fact.
Workshop it.
Yeah. The rear touchpad might be Studio Liverpool's doing.
No.
Yeah, the real question is why. So I went in, and I think I must have been using my old save or something like that, because it was set to a really weird control scheme where I'd clearly not grasped the fact that the air brakes on the shoulder buttons are kind of a Wipeout thing.
Yeah.
And I was trying to play it more like Mario Kart or something like that. So I switched it back to the Wipeout controls and was like, oh, hey, that feels way better. Yeah.
Who'd have thought it?
I know, right? But then I did a bit more digging, and there was a kind of touch and tilt thing, and you can use gyro controls and the touchpad to accelerate and all this kind of stuff, and the rear touchpad for something else. I can't remember what.
I imagine accelerating on that would be quite a cool thing as a concept.
As a concept, sure. You've played a Wipeout recently.
Yeah.
When you think of a Wipeout track, what springs to mind?
Speed and difficulty and corners.
They're kind of all over the place as well, aren't they? Yeah. Really difficult to touch and tilt your way around that. Try keeping track of what an already relatively difficult track is doing when you're waving the console around and all that kind of stuff. So it's I can kind of see why they were tinkering with it, but you shouldn't have bothered.
Okay, fair enough. Every time I mention, that sounds like a good concept from your Vita and its control pad and touchpad, and you always go, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Wipeout. Or Nigel Mansell.
Yeah. So, all right. Admittedly, I've chewed up quite a lot of time on my opening stance.
That's not a problem.
Do you want to go through some of these categories?
Well, I'm thinking we've already boxed off one that we need to give a score to, which graphically. Yeah, so we are, like Rich said, going to go for 5 categories on this. Number 1, graphics. Eyes down, pens on, in.
Oh yeah, I got my pen out. I'm keeping tabs on this.
It's real podcast thriller.
I've just written 2040.
What are you doing? Oh my god.
I'm already rigging the scores.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, you're going to be like, oh, you're taking the piss here.
I'm not adding these up. They're completely arbitrary. I'm just writing them down for posterity's sake.
Oh, I mean, I've added mine up. But anyway.
Oh,
sure. And I worked out an average score also.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because that's how I get my score out of 10.
You came armed with maths.
Yeah, well, remember the first pod I came out and I'm now 17,000 blah, 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 many days old.
Oh, yeah. No, I should have seen it coming.
Yeah. So, just like you would see this 10 out of 10 score that I gave it for graphics.
Oh, you gave it 10.
I shit you not. This was one of the best looking games that I have ever played.
Really?
Yeah.
Full stop.
From the menus in, even to a point where if you win a gold medal on a race, they release to you, the player, a little bit of artwork, and the artwork is a blueprint of some of the track. And it's
that's kind of cool.
That's just like a cool fucking thing to do, isn't it? I feel like that's something that a Japanese developer would do, not a Scouser.
With all due respect to Scousers, funnily enough, on the Slopes Game Room sort of history of Wipeout, apparently quite a few people took the original Wipeout disc back to shops saying, oh no, could I get the UK version, please? This is Japanese. And I think that's quite a compliment.
Yeah.
Really.
So I genuinely believe that score, 10 out of 10, is not conjecture.
you would back that.
Yeah, got it.
All right.
Have them apples.
I'm going to go 9 out of 10. Okay. Having played Uncharted again, and like Uncharted was, when I was sitting there going like, oh yeah, like a really good looking Vita game, Uncharted. Playing 2048 again, I'm like, no, this looks way better. The only problem is that occasionally it's very difficult to see what you're meant to be doing. You're looking for shortcuts, and like I know plenty of people would be saying, oh, you've got to learn the tracks. It's an arcade racer, you've got to learn the tracks. Yeah. It's like there's learning the tracks, and then there's playing the subway level where you're on rails or above rails all the time, like a set of, and they're going in and out, flipping by you at whatever speed, and it's just on a tiny screen. It's a little difficult to pass occasionally what you're meant to be doing.
I wonder if that's maybe part of the aesthetic of that game, because like you said, it was set in the past compared to the rest of the game, so maybe it was meant to be a bit more dark and grungy. Maybe. Yeah, no,
it's absolutely a design thing. You're racing around. At one point, I think one of the tracks is like around a church at one point and stuff like that, and there's tall buildings you're going over, or you're going through a park at one point. You ever had to negotiate trees on Wipeout Pure? I seriously doubt it. Admittedly, you don't have to like weave in and out of them or anything like that, but nonetheless, it's the sort of thing that it's a lot easier to either A, be distracted, or B, just not see the turn and end up like hitting the sort of middle of a Y junction and just stopping dead. That sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that brings us very nicely onto Control.
I think it does, doesn't it?
That's so. Wipeout, notoriously difficult, very speedy. Obviously, that's the whole idea, isn't it? Going back to Pure, then there are ways of adding to the longevity of the game. So adding different speeds into the way that you race, and also there are different racing teams you can pick up with Wipeout. I assume the same in 2048. And that's always been a really cool idea, and you can get different races, different stats, so ones with different speed. I mean, why wouldn't you pick up the one that has the most speed immediately and go on the fastest possible speed? Because that would be stupid. But you think it's going to be fun, and it's not. It's really, really hard. Especially when you're getting used to the controls again, because like you say, the air braking is a Wipeout thing. And using the L button and the R button to be able to do that is just getting that back in. Sort of the first 4 tracks, I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I was just launching missiles everywhere, and I was like, oh no. And even on like, I think the 3rd track in, before I recognised, and it might be a different mechanic in your game, but when you pick up a power-up on Wipeout Pure, you can use it, or you can actually use it to repair your shield, which is very useful. And it's useful when you realise you can do that. Rather than on the 3rd track in, you're smashing about and then you blow up and you're like, well, this is going to be extremely difficult because this is meant to be the easiest league. But I finally learned that. Control-wise, I felt like as a racer, it's a bit unforgiving. Like sometimes, probably that is with hindsight though, that I'm just used to now with Burnout and Forza, where I just crash off walls and it just kind of auto-corrects me and doesn't do much to sort of, damage my car. I mean, obviously on Burnout you crash and things, but there's still a shape to a track where you can just lean against a wall and it won't cause you any problem.
Pinball round.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas in this, it's the complete opposite. You just don't want to be hitting walls, but you want to be going at high speed at all times. So, from a point of view, how responsive the controls are to that, they're pretty good. But I feel like you'd want a bit more maybe out of the analog stick on the PSP to be able to say that's what the concept is. Don't hit walls and do it very quickly, and also get some more boosts and avoid this missile and things. So, control-wise, it wasn't necessarily the best part of the game for me. How about you?
I think it fared well, really well. Like it never really felt like any of the mistakes were down to the controls. Whenever I was screwing up, and believe me, I was screwing up a hell of a lot. I was much more likely to put that down to either me or the track just graphically doing its thing.
Yeah.
there were, I don't know if there were barrel rolls in Wipeout Pure.
Yeah, again, I only learned about that about 75% of the time into doing it. And I was like, what have I just done?
Yeah. So, there were quite a few times where I'd be trying to do that and it just wasn't coming off. And, it was almost like trying to learn special moves in a fighting game. So, okay, clearly, there's a disconnect between how I think it should be done and how the game wants it done. There was a bit of fiddling to do. I think the big thing I've kind of already covered, and it's just that utterly superfluous gyro control scheme that it is definitely a swing and a miss. But is clearly not how it was meant to be played. I could see why it would be in there as a kind of a novelty or an accessibility thing, but it's very difficult to use, or at least use effectively. And I mean, without wishing to touch on the sort of general gameplay stuff too much, but then I guess gameplay kind of touches on most of this from what we're saying, rather than having its own category, because I've just realised it hasn't got its own category. But it's it's fine. It's fine.
This body's on fire at the moment.
Through teetotal Wipeout like a stick of rock. If you cut through it, it just says gameplay. What was I saying? All I'm thinking about now is rock.
Yeah. I love rock.
Rock's great.
Do you like aniseed though? I like the aniseed rock. Well, that's the original flavour.
Yeah, I know, but it doesn't.
What do you go for? Tutti frutti?
Quite like a minty one.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, mint, okay, mint or aniseed. I'm not going for the shitty, colourful tutti frutti one. That's fucking horrendous. And I hate when rock goes soft as well.
You don't want soft rock.
What is Edinburgh rock about? What is Edinburgh rock about? That's like chalk. Have you had that before?
I have. Yeah.
It's a travesty against man. that doesn't have gameplay written through it. It just has shit
chalk
written through it. Yeah, chalk. Just bad vibes written through that.
So this pod brought to you by Edinburgh Rock and Powerade. Control wise, it is solid. It does the job. It feels responsive, and I think from what you're saying about sort of going in at the deep end with the fastest ship and the fastest tracks and the fastest speeds, it sounds as though the way that the sort of single player stuff set out has a bit more of an easing in. You have to kind of unlock the championships as you go.
Yeah.
They get progressively quicker and all that kind of stuff. So by the time you get to the last one, you are, effing and jeffing your way through.
It's 200cc Mario Kart.
Yeah. But the controls were there for it, I got on well.
Okay. Give me a score.
I'm going to go 8. 8 feels about right. And it feels stupid to deduct points for a gyro control scheme, but there's just no point to it, and that's time they could have spent doing something else, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm 7 for Wipeout Pure. I feel as though I know there's a point to be made that is it me or is it the controls, but in the end, I am the controller. Controller that isn't. I should be able to use it even. And obviously, I said that I went on high speeds and things, but I tried some of the slower races and also some of the slower sort of settings as well. And I still found it a little bit jarring when you were air braking around a corner. It didn't seem to kick around a corner as much as I wanted to. It almost slowed the race down too much.
Okay.
And it was so I want to be able to do this at speed, and that's where I guess pinballing off the wall would be, an easy way of making that happen. So it might just be me, but I felt like control-wise, it wasn't as responsive coming out of corners, coming out of air brakes as I wanted it to be, going back into speeding up. So
I'll tell you what, on Wipeout Pure, did you have a kind of a combat race variant or anything like that? So you do on 2048, and this was the other reason I kind of deducted a point that I should have covered before, but got distracted by rock. There is an explicitly combat driven.
I want everyone to know how pleased Rich looked with
very pleased. Combat driven mode. And the idea is that you're not necessarily racing. You're just trying to do as much damage as possible to your opponents. It uses the PS Vita's right stick to do a quick 180 so that you can shoot people behind you.
Oh, cool.
Before it starts reminding you to go back the other way.
Yeah.
So you are still basically racing, just not, going first or whatever.
Yeah.
I found that I would only do that by accident because the right analog stick is so close to the X button. And, that it's a not uncommon thing with me and the Vita because I've got quite long fingers and thumbs and stuff. It's quite easy for me to get a bit tangled up in it. But if I'm kind of getting to this level of nitpicking, by and large, they do the job. I'm not changing the score.
And you would be quite good at nitpicking with those long thumbs.
I would, yes, yeah.
I might hire you for my children.
Do they have nits?
Maybe. I use Vosine.
This podcast brought to you by Vosine.
Edinburgh Rock covered in Vosine. That's something you don't want to try. So, moving swiftly on then to music. Yeah. So, you go first this time.
So, I think... What do I think? As I've kind of touched on, Wipeout and music has always gone hand in hand, right? And especially as, it was partway through reviewing this that I had the crushing disappointment of realising that I've been living a lie since hanging out in my friend Alex's room. Yeah. I was ready for my socks to be knocked off by this, right? I was hyped. I was gonna, have this crazy experience, and as I'm sure you can already tell, it doesn't quite match up to that. It's no real fault of the music, but at the same time, I can remember the fact that louder is used in the intro, and apart from that, I'm drawing an absolute blank for what else is in there, and that's again not knocking the music, but again, to go back to the Slopes Game Room video, he makes a really, really good comparison between the original Wipeout and Tony Hawk's, and the kind of impact those soundtracks had. And I've always been a Tony Hawk's, end of the spectrum. So, obviously, the music was never quite going to grab me in the same way. I'm comfortable with that, and that is okay. But still, it didn't grab me in the way that I was ready and waiting to be grabbed.
So, would you describe it as suitable music? Because that is the word I would use.
It does the job. It fits the aesthetic, and obviously, the whole franchise is built around this vibe. And kind of like the old Ridge Racers and stuff like that, where as well, there is a style to it.
I think it's called electronic music, Rich.
Is it really?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh,
I believe so.
I meant the general overall aesthetics, but thank you. I will note this down as I remove your scores.
Oh, me
patronising.
I mean, the reason I'm saying suitable is because I thought the same sort of thing when I first started playing the game. I was like, oh, this music, it's not my kind of music. Like, you're talking like Orbital, and I guess it's like a sort of soft trance sort of thing that kind of goes in the background, and it feels like it does mellow you out, and it feels like you're kind of getting that sort of yin and yang with the fast speed to the sort of music in the background, kind of like a bit floaty light almost, I feel like. But yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I can play this game with this music in the background. But to think that, and it's a bit of a weird sort of situation where I know that people think that this music is seminal, and people have reviewed these games thinking, oh, the music's absolutely amazing, it knocks your socks off. I'm the same as you, I'm like, oh no, the music's pretty good, and it fits really well with the aesthetic of the game. But is it blowing my mind, or is it making me have those those moments that I had when I was growing up? Like Tony Hawk, I'm going to choke. Damn you, Powerade!
The memories of Tony Hawk and Ace of Spades coming on.
Someone shoved some end of a rock down there. And yeah, I just didn't have that same sort of feeling. But I won't lie, it did grow on me as I was playing more and more of it. And I'll come back to this point later on when we come to the content and longevity of the game, that this game grew on me. One of the things that grew on me was the music. So I started off being a bit more like, oh, it's okay, to being a bit like, no, like the more tracks I play, the more I'm into it. I probably was more into, and funny enough, so Studio Liverpool used to be called Psygnosis, and that really cool owl logo. And they did, I don't think they developed it, but they released and published even Roll Cage. And that was a PS1 racer that I've obviously referenced previously, and I absolutely loved that game. And one of the things that I loved about that was the music. Now that was Fatboy Slim and things like that, and that was great, and that felt absolutely incredible. But the music was just a bit more relevant, almost. So, but yeah, I mean, I ended up really enjoying the music being there and it being the type of music it was. So I'm going to go with a hard 8 for the music. Yeah.
Do you reckon that the developers feel a bit of pressure?
From us right now?
Well,
probably not
us right now. But, like, you know, when they're making, say, Wipeout Pure or something like that, you know, you've had Wipeout, everybody's raved about the soundtrack. Raved about the soundtrack.
Another please.
But, you know, like, it sets a high bar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, you know, do you reckon they would worry about things like that, or would they just go in and be like, no, trust the system, we know what we're doing?
I think developers building a franchise, and especially this studio, building the franchise into new handhelds both these times, and then obviously every single time that Sony released a console, Wipeout's there, so they must have always been involved. I mean, it's a Sony studio, isn't it? Studio, or at least they own it, don't they?
Is it still going?
I know. I think it was. I think actually that it was maybe the last Wipeout was your Wipeout for that studio. I feel like it changed.
I think it was a different developer for the Omega stuff. Yeah.
So, they must feel some sort of pressure. Like, so if you take it to a grander scale, for example, when you say, right, I don't know, Naughty Dog, and they're talking about The Last of Us, and then The Last of Us 2 on the next console and things. And it's like, you know, developing that from going to the next big thing, and that's like such a huge game for everybody. To develop the next game and to feel the pressure of building on that, even if you are trusting the process, you're obviously probably trying to push the envelope to think, we need to make this better and better. So, yeah, it'll be the same as anyone developing a movie or something, or a movie franchise. I think you definitely would feel that pressure.
That makes sense. And I wasn't just asking that to give me more time to think of the score for music, by the way. So I think I kind of had the opposite conundrum to you, because it wasn't a case of the more tracks I play, the more I hear it, the more like I'm enjoying it. I almost just wanted there to be more soundtrack.
Okay.
Like, it felt a little small, a little short, and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, however many other innuendos you want in this sentence. But, yeah, what was there did the job, but it would have been nice to have had more of it. So I'm gonna go with 7. Okay. Do I feel comfortable with that? Yeah. No,
yes, you do, because it's lower than my score, so I feel comfortable with it.
Shut up. Performance. Talking of more innuendos.
The little blue pill that could for Wipeout. I think it's your turn to go first. We're very lovely about this, aren't we? My fucking turn.
After you, sir. So, I'm pretty sure, and I'm going to flick through my notes here, and I never normally flick through notes because I don't normally have my notebook with me, which is why I sound like a rambling
There's a notebook there. I see it.
Very
nice purple.
It's a nice purple, but
mauve?
Yeah. A friend of mine once said that I write like a Dickensian orphan, and I can't unsee it now. Like, I absolutely do. That is a laugh of recognition.
That was wonderful.
So I wrote early on that, you know, it was rock solid, the performance, and then I got to like the combat bits, and there are explosions everywhere, and it just goes ballistic, and it's not. It's not. But you just have to sort of go a little way through before you can start unlocking these things. Which is not to say that the whole thing tanks. Believe me, I've played much, much worse performing PS Vita games. I played one last week.
Yeah.
Call of Duty
Yeah, it
was
was,
bloody
yeah.
awful. But yeah, by and large, again, like more than does the job, and it was responsive and quick enough that again, I didn't really feel like it was the game's fault when I started screwing up, with maybe like one or two minor exceptions in very specific events. But on the whole, like we've said many times, you can tell that the developers knew the system and were able to get a lot out of it. So yeah, generally really, really good.
Yep. I think that I don't need to say too much. Sorry, I clearly don't need to say too much more because I'm losing my voice. But I think that performance-wise, I didn't see too many hitches really. There was a couple of times where I said before the frame rate didn't really drop, but maybe when a couple of explosions went off and things, it would be sort of like, that's kind of slowed down a little bit there. But what was that like that initially back in 2005? And it's like it probably was, but it's like, has that stopped my enjoyment of the game? No. So I mean, I don't need to add too much about that really. I'm going to go with a hard 8 on performance.
I'm going to go with 9.
Just to spread those scores up.
Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, but they're thereabouts, aren't we?
They're close. they're very close.
Who'd have thought it?
Longevity and content.
Right. I want to talk about this.
Yep, go for it.
When I first picked up this game, there was 8 tracks. So there's 8 tracks available to me in any specific speed set.
Okay.
There's Alpha League and Beta League. And then you complete both of those and you would get the Ascension League, which would then be both sets of those tracks together, so the exact same 8 tracks. And then there was 8 different racing teams, and that was it. And I was like, gosh, this game's really good, but it doesn't feel like there's a lot to it. And I was like, well, there is other modes, so I'll look at the other modes. One of them's time trial, which I'm not bothered about time trial really in games too much, because I feel like you're trying to do it for records, and I'd rather just play against the bot racers, really, that I feel like the competition's there. But I understand that it is a mode that people will access to 100% complete a game. And then there was another mode called Zone Mode. I don't know if you had this.
I did, yeah.
So Zone Mode was a bit of a funny one as well for me, because I played the first track on it, and I discovered there was 4 tracks for it. But after the first time playing the first track, I was like, I'm not that bothered about this. But I went back and gave it another go, and I enjoyed it again more and more the more I played it. So Zone Mode is where you have, basically there's no way to get your shield back on your craft, and you just zoom around a specific track, just keep on going round and round and round this track as fast as you can, and you get faster every time you go through a zone, and you've got to get through a certain number of zones to get a medal. So it was like, you get through 30 zones, you get the gold medal, and if you've got the bronze or silver medal, I think, on the first 3 tracks, then you got to the next track. So it was good that there was some progression, and I did start to enjoy that more and more. It felt like an unnecessary mode, but it was something else there. And then I discovered that there was DLC for this game. So I went back and I Googled, and I thought, there must be more to this game somewhere. And I discovered there was a lot more. There was 17 more tracks to find. This DLC was free. It was released by Studio Liverpool because they'd been late on the release of the game, and they decided they were just going to release 17 more tracks over a period of time.
That's an apology.
Absolutely free. And those tracks completely reinvent the game and add hours and hours to it. And you find yourself more and more invested in trying to get the records and get the gold medals, because actually that releases more tracks. And the tracks are a bit more themed as well. So the first 2 sets of tracks feel, and this is what I was trying to reference before, feel a bit bland compared to, but they definitely build into it and become more colourful. There's more loops and more features in the background as they release more and more of the DLC. And it's crazy to think that the first part of it was just released as was. And then they were like, it was almost like they were scrambling to add more to it. And it was like, oh, we should have added these initially. And this brings back home the conversation we have regularly about how retro is this console? Because actually, you could add DLC to this console, but it was really difficult for them to do. And actually, they had another hand in trying to develop, along with other parts of PSP, the technology to have downloadable content onto memory card. Oh. That is in. So how cool is that? That was at the ground level of that technology, what they were trying to do there. And you just think, everything we take for granted nowadays, it's so easy to do. Like we've got drives, Google Drive, etc., and things like that. And actually, they were working really hard to get that to happen, so they could get these tracks out for this game. And it absolutely flourishes for it. If you'd asked me at the start of the week, before I played much of this game, maybe an hour and a half, this score would have been down like 5 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But adding all these tracks in, and also the different content that was in there, and then you kind of, even when you go into they've got a stat menu, and they've got every stat going, how many missiles you've launched, how many missiles you've absorbed to get your shields back. They have a stat on the stat menu. How many minutes have you been looking at your stats? It's just ridiculous.
Oh, I like that.
It's very, very in-depth once you start looking for it.
Yeah.
Like I said before about the gold medals, you're winning gold medal, you're getting a bit of artwork as well, and it actually gives you this really fulfilling chart of where you've got medals and what colour your medals are. And almost like you're doing like one of those football team charts. So you're moving your guys around as the league goes on during the year. Same sort of thing. You're like, oh, I've got that gold medal there, I've got that bronze medal there. It's mostly bronze medals, I'm going to be honest. But you knew where your progression was, and it made you get into it a little bit more. And I'm not usually into that. Certainly at this age where I'm progressing in single player games, I'm not that fussed. But that felt like I was like, really, I want more, and I want to play this game more. So the content and longevity just erupted after I got that DLC. And that would have been available to everybody at the game time as well. So I want to give it the score that deserves. Which would be a 9.
9.
Cross out that 5 that you just drew.
It's scrubbed.
It really was an in-depth game for an arcade racer. There was a lot to it once you got those extra tracks.
So, 2048. It sounds as though it's set up quite differently. So it's not like you can, say, select a track, select a speed, and off you pop. That said, I think you probably could if you were in the multiplayer.
Okay.
And obviously being out in like 2012, the online multiplayer was the big thing.
Right.
So I definitely feel like I've missed a trick by not being able to access that. That said, there is still plenty of single player content, and from what I remember your message earlier in the week about is this it? And
life in general,
standard procedure. And going from that, I would have said that 2048 had way more content, but it sounds as though as soon as you got the DLC involved, that flipped on its head. So the way it's set up for the sort of single player is you have your 3 sort of championship years. You have your kind of main through thread of maybe 8-10 races or events of different kinds, be it combat or time trial or zone, and then you can unlock these kind of side events that kind of gradually fill up this what starts as basically a blank white space. You can navigate it with the touch screen and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of satisfying and tactile seeing this stuff kind of grow and develop. The tracks that are there, there's a decent number. I didn't count, but I didn't feel like I was getting bored. But that said, whenever the subway one came up, there was that moment of like, oh no,
just turn it off.
Yeah, but there'd be a couple that would pop up and be like, oh, okay, cool, like this one again. But you'd be doing a slightly different event, and they would have variations. Like you'd be in a really agile ship, and everybody else would be like really tanky ones, and you just had to survive and get a certain place and all that kind of stuff. It didn't feel like it outstayed its welcome, at least for the bits that I played. And I would not be I wouldn't tell anybody that I'd unlocked everything and I'd seen it all, because I definitely haven't.
Yeah. I would. I don't ever, but I can say it.
You can also unlock time trials and stuff like that for the different speed classes. So there's stuff to do. It's meaty. It's not like you you get to a point and be like, cool, where's the rest of the game now, please? Yeah. It is, there's enough of it there to be getting on with. What I did find really intriguing was that for one of the teams, I unlocked an extra mode, which unlocks like a prototype ship, which instead of just being a speed class, starts at like the lowest speed class, but every time you go over a boost pad, it increases the top speed that it can get to.
Oh, right, cool.
So it gets faster as you go around a lap, but it resets every time you get to the start-finish line. So like the final couple of bits would be really quick, and then it would kind of ease off, and then you'd kind of... So you're basically almost like having to win the race every lap, if that makes sense. And between that and kind of slightly rubber bandy AI, didn't mean that there was enough challenge to keep you coming back. And
did you win all the races?
Fuck no.
No, yeah.
Fuck no. Like you basically either get a pass or an elite pass. So like, say for a standard race, a pass might be one of the slower classes. It might be 5th or higher, or later on it might be 3rd or higher, or I think one of them 2nd or something like that. And an elite pass would be like win the race. Yeah. And that was it. Like, there was no gold, silver, bronze, or anything like that. I'm quietly confident if I did go through and win everything, there'd be a bunch more stuff to unlock. There's a lot more like extra races and things like that I've not dabbled with. Things like the zone mode as well, I found really, really fun. Yeah. I also found out there was DLC, as I've mentioned. Like, there was basically a PS3 game's worth of campaign content that just dropped into it, which is great, which is awesome. Like, but you did have to pay for it, and still do. Which is why I've ordered the PS4 version, because I was like, yum yum yum. Where's the rest of my meal, please? Thank you. So
how much is that retail for
now? Second hand for the Amiga one. Yeah. Mine's going to be about £8.
That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're going to get for that is going to be brilliant.
Yeah, and I would quite happily play through what I have just played through, but on a bigger screen with a slightly bigger controller and stuff like that, and I will have a lovely time, thank you. So like it's definitely not outstayed its welcome. It definitely feels like there's more stuff to do. I can imagine back in the day, multiplayer would have been an absolute hoot.
I want to point out at this point as well, there is a multiplayer option on the PSP, but much like PS Vita being even older, there's obviously a lot of it doesn't exist anymore. You can't access it anymore. But I think from what I read previously as well, that it was quite difficult to load into games and meet people and stuff, which I found in a lot of PSP games anyway. Like when you were trying to get into lobbies, it was never really as intuitive as it has become nowadays.
I think it's one of those things, isn't it? Sort of going back and see these, like, suddenly it feels like in some cases it could be like as much as half or 3/4 of the game that you're missing out on, which is a shame. But hey ho. So content wise, I'm having a kind of heart and head crisis here. So my heart is saying give it 9, my head is saying give it 8. And the only reason for that is the fact that there is all that DLC, but there's an easier way of playing it. It's kind of like the Civilization problem that we had a couple of weeks ago, where it's like, it was really, really good at the time, but it's kind of been superseded since.
But then at the same time, from hearing you talk about it, it sounds like there's a lot there. And you said it didn't outstay its welcome either.
No, but like, I think by the same token, there's that part of me that's like, there is clearly more stuff to unlock, but at the same time, how much stuff is there to unlock? I'm not a professional game critic. I would like to be.
Say what?
Internet. But got a full-time job that I need to do and all that kind of stuff. So it's not like I can dedicate the time that I want to. But then that's why I've gone and bought it for another system that I can sit and I can just dip into it every now and then, and all that kind of stuff, and see more of it, DLC included. Which I think is a compliment.
It certainly is.
So, and that's not me just trying to justify the purchase.
You just bought the game a diamond ring.
I think I did. I'm going to give it a 9. Yep. So are we doing this maths?
I mean, I've done my maths. No, it's okay because the scores are surely going to work out exactly the same. So you were -1, then you were +1, then you were -1, then you were +1, and then we
And
were
then
the same.
So that is actually the same score.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was a fruitless exercise.
What's the point of that? It's an hour.
We're meant to fucking
wasted.
hate each other. Then it's like, in your face, but we just drew. But yeah, that works out to be fun.
That wasn't planned.
No.
I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. None of this is planned. We cannot stress that enough.
Should I just give content an 8?
No.
Say there was a winner.
No, I don't want to do that.
I don't mind.
You the way you were talking
So
about
now
it.
we're arguing politely.
Throw fisticuffs over and just trying to make a difference.
God.
So that means they both got 43 out of 50, which, if you're good at your maths, which I'm not, but I used a calculator, 8.6 out of 10.
Okay.
So call it a 9 out of 10 both games, which is what
which is probably what I would have given it if we were doing it
exactly.
arbitrarily.
Yeah, no, I'd have given it 9 out of 10 as well. I was.
So what's the point of this then?
Yeah, no, really. We had that Charlotte Rock, didn't we? That was all right.
Yeah,
that
was good.
Yeah, I'm gonna drink beer this time. Power's been fine.
All right, so I think we can agree that Wipeout, as trailed at the start,
brilliant. To be fair,
Wipeout is the winner. So you could have stopped listening about an hour ago and have basically the same experience.
Idiots.
But welcome, well done for staying this far. So I know we sort of chatted about it briefly, and I'm also very aware that we're keeping these good people far longer than we had to. But what makes an arcade racer? Wipeout is clearly a very good arcade racer. You and I had not a disagreement about Burnout, but we're cruising for a bruising on Burnout Paradise. I think that is something we can argue about. So go on, Fazz, convince me. Why is Burnout Paradise not an arcade racer?
So in my mind, this game is an arcade racer, and what I mean by that is that the main mechanic of the game and the through thread is that you are racing against other racers, and you're not building a world, or there's no real free roam mode where you're going off track to go and have a little explore, or this looks nice, or I'm going to do this, jump to get, this is jump 50 out of 100, or whatever that is, and you haven't got little side quests necessarily. It's just pure racing, and you're getting good at racing around different tracks. And I feel like, I'm trying to think of examples of games. And the reason this came around was because obviously we saw an article, didn't we, that somebody had said, these are the 10 best arcade races. Yeah. And it was...
Wipeout wasn't on there.
It was awful. They were terrible, terrible article it was, and that just shows you that there are bad people on the internet. But it was missing some key games. But aside from that, it was just... Then I saw Burnout Paradise on there, and I also saw Forza Horizon 5, I think it was, the newest Forza. Both those games are exceptional. They are beautiful, wonderful little bundles of joy that I put inside my machine and let them go and fucking love it. Anyway, great games. But they are not arcade races because they don't do what I just said they do. They flit about. You buy cars and things, and you go back to your garage, and you go to Mexico, and you get sponsors and things. You don't need all that shit going on for an arcade racer. Like to play Daytona when you sat in the arcade. You want flashing lights. You want cool music. You want sometimes, if you're in an arcade, you want a fucking gear stick and a steering wheel, and you just want to let fly, and you want to be against the computer or against the time, and just letting rip and not worry about anything else in the world. I don't want to worry about, where my house is and how much I'm buying it for. And this guy that's on the phone like, oh, hey, I'm Chet, and I'm your new mate. And you're like, all right, fuck off, Chet. I'm trying to race here. One of the things that really annoys me about those games, that, like I said, are wonderful, you have to go somewhere to do a race. I'm like, no, I just want to be in the race. I'm not cruising through a virtual world to be like, oh, well done for making that sun look so nice. Is it those wonderful vistas? That's seeing some reviews and stuff. I'm like, no, let's race, man. Let's go. Come on. Or let me smash some shit up in Burnout. I just want to get 55 takedowns in this massive race. I feel epic doing it. I feel like they're two separate types of games. Have I convinced you?
Nearly.
Fuck.
Nearly. what you have convinced me of, though, is that I really want you to make an arcade racer, because, like, you saying about, like, someone phoning me like, oh, hey, I'm Chet, I'm your new mate, like, really reminds me of Need for Speed Underground 2 for some reason. You know, where you had, like, the, text messages and whatnot.
Yeah. We've got some Need for Speeds to play, haven't we?
I think we do at some point. And I just really want to see one set in Leeds, where it's a bit shit. And, you know, I would pay good money for, you know, Fast and Furious Leeds. Fast. I said fast.
I mean,
fast and Furious.
I'm going to be honest, like, literally coming round to yours tonight, outside the local corner shop round the corner from you, there was a Rolls Royce just sat there. And the amount of people that were walking up to speak to the guy in the Rolls Royce, and the guy in the Rolls Royce didn't look like a Rolls Royce user, if I would say that. Right. As in, like, if I was going to pass judgment.
Typecasting much.
Yeah, very much. That is in. But there was looks like there's an audience there for, you know, car usage in Leeds.
Yeah, well, I mean, somebody went
Good
past
car
us
usage
the other day in a tricked out Corsa. So, and I literally have one of those on Need for Speed Underground too. Yeah. So, yeah.
Put those two against each other, that'd be awesome. That's what I'm going to see.
Burnout Paradise, I think, is often held up as, like, one of the great arcade races. And I think, like, you have a point about, like...
You mean racer? Just not...
It's an arcade racer because of, like, how the cars handle. It's not necessarily the fact that you've got a menu system rather than a world map.
But you don't think, like, I guess specifically in Burnout, well, maybe in Forza as well, like, there's not a lot of racing. They say there's more racing in Forza, but it's like, do you know what I mean? It's more like you kind of do events, don't you?
Yeah,
and
but on Burnout,
which are great, but
it's tracking everything, and everything has a score,
mm-hmm.
and I think that makes it arcadey. So, like, you know, the act of getting around the world can suddenly be a high score game because, you know, they back in the day online and stuff like that. In fact, they probably still do because you can play on PS4 and stuff, can't you? But you know, they could track the top speed along a certain stretch of road and stuff like that. So suddenly you're competing to get to a place to compete.
Yeah.
So I think it's the sort of thing where I do take your point about I just want to be in the race rather than exploring to find the race. Like that is fair. But on the flip side, I think things like Burnout Paradise just found more ways to gamify exploration.
Okay. I mean, funnily enough, I prefer those kind of games. It's just I don't define them as as a racing game. Yeah, I just think that it's just a straight track situation for me. That is, you know, like, even I would have imagined at some point that Mario Kart would have started to do a bit of a world building situation, and with all the DLC that's just come out for that, I thought maybe there would be something like that. Maybe where you'd have, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Like you could imagine like a Mario world, where, you know, very easily, like where you're driving around in your carts and interacting with different things and stunts and stuff. Right? Okay, with Nintendo, you need to pay some money for this because this is a great idea, but then they've just brought out tracks again, and it's like, and that doesn't upset me because I like playing Mario tracks. But actually, I probably would have preferred that. But it would have been a different game for me.
It's an interesting thought because, like, for me, like an arcade racer. Sorry, I'm air quoting everyone. You can't see that, but
it's long thumbs.
They're really big air quotes. Like, I think for me, it was always a handling thing. And so to be an arcade racer, it doesn't necessarily mean like the format and the way it's structured.
Yeah,
it is how the vehicle you are driving is going to handle. And how something like Burnout with an explorable world, for the way the cars move and handle, compared to, say, if you had a real life, I don't know, Rolls Royce or Vauxhall Corsa, you know, would be a very different game, right? So I think, you know, for me, the kind of quintessential arcade racer, and the fact that it was criminally left off of that article we mentioned earlier, Sega Rally is, like, for me, the like up there as one of the best. Yeah. And so, you know, you say arcade racer to me, I instantly think, you know, fast, power sliding if possible, or equivalent. So, you know, like air brakes and stuff like that, you know, something to get you around corners in a way that is not necessarily realistic. And all that kind of stuff is immediately what comes to mind. And so I think, like, Burnout Paradise, etc. I think they're absolutely arcade racers.
Well, I'm really glad that we found something to disagree on.
Yeah, fuck you, Fazz.
Oh. That's fair. Yeah, because it's nice to have different opinions, isn't it? And mix it up a little bit every single week and have a, I guess a meeting of minds or a dis-meeting of minds.
A divergence of minds.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Fine, that's what I'm here for, isn't it?
Right, that your notepad. Get it down there. But yeah, that's us this week. Thank you very much again for listening, and we really appreciate you guys. This will definitely get cut. Bye bye now.
Bye.